Alright, now it's time for another really important concept in JavaScript programming: arrays. An array is what's referred to as a data structure. It's a way to store and organize data in JavaScript. You already know how to store, track, and update data with variables. A variable, as you have learned, stores a value. So far, you have used variables to store primitive values, or data types like strings, numbers, and booleans. Assigning a simple primitive to a variable is a bit limiting, because primitives can only hold a single value. Let's say that you want to keep track of each guest's name at the party. For each guest's name, you need to create a new variable. If there are 50 guests at your party, you would have 50 variables. Even worse, you have to declare variables in your program before the program runs. So to make sure you have enough variable for all the invited guests, let's say 50, you need to create 50 variables. Just assume that all the invited guests will show up. Now, some guests might not be able to make it to your party, so some of the variables would go unused. But in case there are 55 guests at your party and 5 of them are uninvited guests, that would be bad because there would be no variables to store them. There has to be a better way, and there is, with arrays. An array is a way of storing more than one value in a single place. Think of an array as a list of items, like a guest list. A guest list might have one guest, 10 or even 100 guests on it, but it's still always just a single guest list. An array is a flexible method of storing sequences of values. It can hold a single string, 50 numbers, or any combination of data types, strings, numbers, booleans, and even other arrays. And you don't have to know ahead of time how many items you are going to add to an array. You can add or remove items as the program runs. For instance, at the beginning of the program, you might have just one guest on the list, but by the end, there could be 50. Creating an array is quite straightforward. You assign an array to a variable, so you start by declaring a variable using the name you want to use to reference the array. You follow the same rules you would use for naming variables. If you are not sure what those rules are, be sure to check the description below for the separate lectures on rules of naming variables. Next, you add an assignment operator, followed by a set of square brackets and semicolon. The brackets represent an array. Inside the brackets, you add a comma-separated list of values. This could be strings, or numbers, or a combination of different types of values. Alright, now let's create an array. To code along with me, first download the course folder from the link in the description below and open it with your favorite code editor. Here I'm using Visual Studio Code. From the course folder, open the exercise folder called JavaScript Arrays. And then open the index.html file in the browser. Here I also open the JavaScript console. In the index.html file, remember to link arrays.js file. In arrays.js file, I'll start by creating an array of city names. I'll declare a variable named cities using the const keyword and assign it a set of square brackets. These brackets indicate what's called an array literal. Since there are currently no values inside it, it's an empty array. It's like a blank list where I can start to add my items. First, I'll add a string inside it. Now the array has one item in it, a string. To add more items, you type a comma followed by another value. I'll add 3 more string values to the array. You'll often see arrays written like this on a single line, but when you have dozens or more items in an array, it's common to break an array up over multiple lines with each item in the array on a single line like this. Notice that the first bracket stays with the equal sign, the last bracket is on its own line at the end, and each array item is on a separate line. JavaScript isn't too picky about whitespace or line breaks, so this style works well. It's easier to read, and if you need to update items in the array, it's easier to edit. You are starting to learn that an array is really a list of items. Can you think of other data you might organize as an array? How about a musical playlist, a to-do list, or a list of students in a course? The more you program, the more you'll notice that many things come in groups that you can represent using an array. Once you have created an array, you'll want to start using it in your program. So how do you access the different elements in an array? I'll teach you how in the next lecture.